Well, ladies and gentlemen, looking to you, I have a good news, which is that you are not all asleep. But I am sure that you will wake up. I personally attach very great importance to the coming session because it is related to issues which are fundamental for the future of Europe and for global governance in a large sense. So it's a very important, it's one, I think, of the most important sessions, actually, in my viewpoint. We have discussed relatively in depth, if I can express myself in this way, the question of the future of the European Union. We have discussed that, well, since the beginning of this conference. And the purpose, the way we organized the sessions was to show that we have to look beyond conventional wisdom and face reality being that the European Union in 10 years from now might be very fundamentally different from what it is today. And this is to some extent, to a large extent, related with what we are going to discuss now. That is the interaction between what we call the Eastern Europe, the new definition of Eastern Europe, South Caucasus, and we have to go as far as Central Asia. And this panel is representative of these three regions. So I will, each of the speakers, I will ask them, I will start with a very general question, which is how they, from their viewpoint, how they see or foresee the future of the European Union, and what do the is that future from their viewpoint important, and in what sense? What are their own interests in that future? And that is, when I ask for their vision, I mean something that might displease themselves, you know, that might be unpleasant for themselves. You know, you can make predictions that you don't like for yourself, but if you are really realistic, you have to make those predictions or to formulate them. But at the same time, to be positive in the sense of making some recommendations, why the interaction between the EU and their respective regions or countries is important, and how we could better work, you know, between the European Union and their respective countries or regions. So that will be my first question to everyone, so I will not have to repeat it, the first question. And then we will touch on more specific subjects depending on the region. So I think it is probably Song Nim who instructed me to take the speakers in a certain order, but I hurry to say that it is not a diplomatic order. In fact, looking at that, I think this is just the alphabetic order, which is, from a diplomatic viewpoint, a good solution, you know, to many problems. So we will start with Lasha Darsalia. By the way, the four speakers are familiar to the WPC. We have interacted with them several times. I think that the one who is here for the first time in person is Dmitro Kuleba, and as you can see, he exists. You know, he really exists. So, Dmitro, thank you very much also for being here. So, Lasha, we start with you.
Thank you.
So you take my first question, and then we will.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Montbrial. I just want to use this opportunity and express my appreciation to World Policy Forum, World Policy Conference, and personally to you inviting us for this important event. I want to welcome distinguished audience, distinguished speakers, and as we have a very short time, I will be very just few thoughts I want to offer, because if I'll start reading what the department prepared, it will take more time, and that's not really I want to talk about. And it's really important question, what is the future of Europe? It's really about, I don't know, analysis or prediction, but I will say from the perspective of Georgia what we want to be future of Europe, and we want to future of Europe to be as a strategic player worldwide, but especially in our region. And this is very important for us. When breaking up from the Soviet Union, gaining the independence, Georgia made very bold decision, and maybe it was more bold than anyone else in space, but that Georgia wants to be part of European family. Would it be later EU, or would it be NATO? And NATO is also part for us, the understanding of Europe's security architecture. Georgia wanted to be part of that. And partially or mainly even, the result of this was the punishment we received from Russian Federation. 20% of Georgia's territory is occupied by the Russia, and we passed 4 wars with Russia. We passed through ethnic cleansing of our population on these territories, economical embargoes, all these things, and mainly because of this choice of Georgia. And I would say that so for us it is important that we see Europe as strategic player. And also I want to say that it's not really about choice of Europe. Unfortunately, in today's world, it's binary situation. Either Europe will be strategic player or it will not be at all. I understand this is very bold statement, but unfortunately today's world, today's changing international system goes into this direction when we need big and strong strategic players whose foreign policies are based on values and strong understanding of where they are and how important they are. And I think that's where we are at the moment, I even could say that I personally have feeling sometimes even Europe is afraid of this role, and not recognizing its strategic importance, not recognizes the strategic developments we have worldwide. That's so I cannot otherwise explain this attitude to our region, when on the one hand everyone talks about how important a strategic South Caucasus, Central Asia is, but at the same time we don't see the strong and bold decisions and steps in this direction, and sometimes even let me call it not going into too depth, sometimes even looking for excuses not to engage as a strategic actor to the strategic partners. And yeah, so that is maybe I just wanted few words to say about this. There is a lot could be elaborated on this, but just saying generally, we see Europe as a strategic player, or at least we want to see Europe as a strategic player, but there have to be more bold steps in this direction and bold decisions. Only one bold decision I can say was recently made was when Europe finally acknowledged the progress of some countries who are aspiring being members and granted the candidate status to Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. But you also remember how it was the details. That was again the example when Europe was hesitating to make the bold decisions, partially trying to blame it to the candidate countries itself. I just wanted to say very generally, not going into details, but that's maybe where I was.
We unfortunately do not have much time to go too much into the details, but we'll ask now more specific questions, which is that we all know, I think certainly all of us here, that speaking of foreign affairs is never separable from domestic affairs. It's an old subject. And in your case, it's particularly interesting now because you have your public opinion, and you have the, let's say, the external reality. So my first sub-question is it correct to say, as many people are saying, that the majority of citizens of Georgia are in favor of the so-called West, that is a combination of the European Union and NATO? So are they correct in saying that, or is the real situation more subtle?
Yes, and it's very correct, and generally approval or understanding of Georgia's future in Europe, this is kind of something constant. It is maybe plus minus few percent, but it always is the same percent.
Which percentage?
It's we all different polls, but we always speak something between 60 to 80, depending is it about EU, NATO, or which period we are talking about. But definitely this is majority of population, and it does not have the kind of it does not have dependence on the age. Normally in all ages. The thing is that what I would divide is approval of EU idea and the approval of EU bureaucracy. This is maybe, I would say that there is some frustration in some groups, let's say, softly, in Georgia about EU bureaucracy, but thankfully, it never affected the approval of EU idea in Georgia itself.
So now in your government, of which you are a member, you have, of course, to strike a balance between the population aspirations and the reality of the balance of power. How do you, that's almost a personal question, how do you strike a balance in such a way that you have an apparently stable or relatively stable government?
Well, balance is it's not even just finding the balance, but there are key goals of Georgia, and there are existential issues for Georgia, which are two. Georgia's, basically this is security and being part of the Euro-Atlantic area. With other words, territorial integrity of Georgia and being member of EU and NATO. This is something which where is the conventional agreement.
That's
in Georgia.
Red lines.
Yes, these are important issues. But this is end goal. And then what is debate in Georgia is more tactical, how to achieve these both goals, rather than do we need one or the other, or what are our goals. This is very clear in Georgia, what are our goals, but the debate is going on tactical issues, including how we preserve the peace and before we achieve our final goals, and how we preserve the stability in a very turbulent region, actually. And you know that if you take 1,000 kilometers square around Georgia, all major conflicts these days is happening there. We have Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, we have Iran, we have Middle East. All this is in from Tbilisi. All these places are within the 1,000 kilometer distance.
So that means that as long as the external situation globally has not changed in a significant way, your path is likely to remain relatively stable.
Yes, well, I would say that Georgia's situation is that, and this is what we always are saying to our colleagues, we are in, during this storm, we are in the same boat.
Yeah.
We are in the same storm. Problem is that we are not in the same boat. Our boat is much smaller.
The boat is in a storm.
Our boat is much smaller and with a lot of holes in it. Or you can say otherwise, we are living inside of cage with the wounded bear. My grandfather was hunter. He was saying that wounded bear is much dangerous and more dangerous than the one which is not wounded. And so our strategy is survival, immediate strategy, short-term strategy, maybe even medium-term strategy, and long-term strategy is territorial integrity of Georgia and being part of the European European family.
And I think that we in the so-called West have discussed what West means, and so there were interesting discussions in passing in the last 2 days, but in the West I think we should understand, make an effort to understand your situation and to respect it. So thank you very much. Now I move to Vahán Kostanian, who I think is coming for the third time, if I am not mistaken.
Second.
Huh?
Second.
Yes, but maybe because there was one missed opportunity, so I prefer to think in terms of third term. So thank you very much for being with us again. And the situation of Armenia, of course, is quite complex too. To call a cat, you have lost the war with Armenia. But with no, not with yourself. These are the worst, you know. The worst wars are civil wars. But no, with Azerbaijan. But now I think you have reached also some kind of equilibrium. So the first question will be the same. That is, given that context, how do you answer the general question?
Thank you very much, dear Thierry. This is an absolute privilege to be back to WPC, and I owe your word to have an invitation for third time to come in future. But going back, when we started the panel, I was thinking what was the situation generally in the world 2 years ago and today, and many things changed. Saying this, probably I should mention that probably we are living in conventional times. We're living in unconventional times 2 years ago as well, but today it's even more severe than 2 years ago, which means that conventional wisdom is not always working, or it's a single case where conventional wisdom can work. So now we need really unconventional solutions and steps which are needed to be taken. And from the perspective of Armenia, allow me first to describe what are the developments on Armenia-EU track that we had during the last 2 years. And probably one of the most unconventional benchmarks on Armenia's EU aspirations track is the law which was adopted by the Parliament of Armenia last year in March to law on launching the EU accession process, which is a clear political demonstration where Armenia, the government of Armenia, but also people of Armenia see themselves in future. Saying this, we are not naive to think that in 2028 or 2030 we'll be able to become EU member state, but this is a political declaration which is the direction that we are working for to, and with this we set up a new ambitious agenda for reforms to be able to match the European standards. And this reform agenda itself, we believe, is very important exercise for us internally and domestically, which we are going through, starting from visa liberalization dialogue that we have with the European Union, and currently we are the only country in the world with whom EU has VLD negotiations. We are trying to see what are the opportunities of enlarging the portfolio of cooperation with on sectorial different tracks, and in fact the document which was adopted last December between Armenia and EU strategic agenda of Armenia-EU partnership, which sets a good framework and a roadmap for the sectorial and gradual integration for Armenia to the European Union. First time having very important components on security, on economy, which was not the case when we're looking back to CEPA agreement from 2017. So having this said, probably I should mention that EU became a real strategic partner for us. And as our European colleagues like to say, Armenia-EU relations are closer than ever, but for us this is not the limit, and we clearly see the next milestones which are needed to be achieved. And with this regard, also to mention that we're going to have Armenia-EU first summit hosted in Yerevan in May 5th right after the European Political Community Summit, which we have also privileged to host in Yerevan. So things are moving quite fast. Unfortunately, European bureaucracy is not sometimes catching with the speed of geopolitical developments in the region.
You're a very good diplomat in the way you are stating things.
Yesterday with Lasha, we were speaking about, Lasha made the point on different issues, saying that sometimes we need to hurry slow. But if we are speaking about strategic players, even with hurrying slow, you should make sure that you are not late. And this is probably the biggest challenge today for the European Union, sometimes to hurry slow, but make sure that they or we together are not late. And probably another comment on the European future and the Eastern neighborhood. I guess given the time that we are living in and the agenda that EU has with the different regions, the definition of European neighborhood itself should be also redefined. If a couple of years ago, when the Eastern Partnership, for example, was being born, the South Caucasus was the line where the European neighborhood was ending. Today, definitely, European neighborhood, at least from my perspective, it cannot be strategic without Central Asia as well. And here, the South Caucasus and 3 countries of South Caucasus play a very important and strategic role to connect Central Asia with the European Union. And we see that there are different tendencies of this partnership growing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's very precise. But of course, in the medium to long term, these connections will almost very probably be organized and come into reality. Meanwhile, we have you have some other problems to solve in your environment. Azerbaijan is still there, and you have agreed to support the TRIP corridor project. And well, looking at you, maybe you will correct my statement, which is supposed to allow Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan to connect. But this certainly is a crucial point in the near to middle term. Can you comment a little bit about that, and more generally your relation with Azerbaijan?
Yes, thank you very much. To start, probably supporting TRIP project, probably it's not the precise definition of the agreements made in Washington, because TRIP is a project that Armenia has full ownership first, and second, we are ourselves much interested in opening of the communications in the region. And it's not only connecting the main part of Azerbaijan with Nakhichevan, it's much bigger and strategic project to connect Central Asia to Europe, and understanding also the commitment to have reciprocal benefits. It basically also means that the southern parts of Azerbaijan, of Armenia, can connect to northern part of Armenia using the Nakhijevani rail. And with the unblocking which will take place, we will be able to connect not only east to west, but also Gulf to Black Sea, which is a huge game changer for the whole region. And we are much interested in implementing the project. There are active talks with the American colleagues how we're going to establish the company, Armenian-American joint venture in Armenia. We already started the feasibility study, but also to mention that we already started the opening of communication in the region itself, because after the August 8, we have the precedent, for example, of importing grain from Kazakhstan using Azerbaijani rail and Georgian rail, and this is a very unique example how regional cooperation can work and how creating additional interdependencies in the region can build more stability and peace in the region. Coming to Armenia, Azerbaijan, well, both leaders of two countries numerously mentioned after August 8 that peace is already established between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the processes that we have now, we like to call it peace institutionalization, taking further steps to build economic ties between our two countries. We started already direct bilateral trade, importing gasoline from Azerbaijan, and hopefully in near future we already identified what we shall be exporting from Armenia to Azerbaijan, but also in the same time working on people-to-people contacts. Civil society representatives are meeting, and what is important, we are meeting not in third countries only, but also in Armenia and in Azerbaijan. We also have a very important format which was established with our Georgian colleagues of trilateral consultations between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, where me and Lasha are personally involved as well. And here also we see very big perspective of the regional cooperation between our three states, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, but also with the wider neighbors of ours.
Thank you very much. A very short footnote, and please in a few seconds, for a very special, particular question. You know, in France, you used to have a significant Armenian diaspora. So why has it become so silent? I knew two persons who were symbols of that diaspora. That was Charles Aznavour, and in French, you know, and Patrick de Vedjan, who was a good friend of mine. Both of them, unfortunately, have passed away. So, why are they so silent now?
Whom?
No, whom, I don't know whom, because the two, Charles Aznavour is passed away, and Patrick de Vedjan too. But so, who are the leaders of your diaspora in France?
I guess I should not comment about the citizens of France. You know, it wouldn't be politically correct.
You have a diaspora.
I can comment how
about
vocal
it,
Armenia is nowadays on international arena, which so I believe you can agree with.
You will tell me in private. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Vahan, for these very interesting answers. And now I move to Dmytro Kuleba. Again, Dmytro, I'm extremely honored and happy also to have you in person with us. You made your reputation, so to speak, during a very hard period. Foreign Minister of Ukraine during the most difficult, probably, periods of this war. And I understand that now you are teaching, in particular in Paris, Sciences Po, and writing a book that will be published, I think, in a few months from now, on diplomacy at war, which is most interesting subject. But you have a lot of experience that very few people have. We have discussed actually last night the question, which is my first question, about the future of the European Union. And again, because I myself intervened several times since the beginning of this conference, I am personally convinced that if the enlargement of the European Union continues to Ukraine, but almost necessarily and unavoidably to Balkan countries overall, and until an ultimate border that would be ultimate during the next few decades, Belarus, Russia, and Turkey, that will be an extremely different European Union, and the issue of security will be have to be defined in a totally different context. So my first question to Mitro is actually the same as to all of you, but perhaps I would like to ask you, Mitro, to put your answer into this framework of the likely evolution of Europe in this new, very new context.
Well, I think Europe is not set in stone. The European Union, as we know it, is only 20 years old since the last wave of enlargement.
30
years old. No, but the
30,
Central
30,
Europe,
34.
Central Europe
Yes.
exceeded in what, early 2000, so 20. But I'm bad at math, so I have to apologize. And it has been evolving. It started with 2 small communities, then it became a big community, then it decided to become a union, then it decided to expand. There were people who tried to take the European Union above the skies and turn it into a federal project that failed. So Europe has approached a moment when it has to take itself to the next level. And it's not only geography that defines that. I think the European Union is proud of being a safe and rich place, because when we hear people speaking about the successes of Europe since the Second World War, what comes to mind first? There is no war, and we are prosperous. But both of these achievements are being severely challenged now. And the European Union, as it stands today, is struggling to address these 2 problems and to guarantee that it will remain a safe and prosperous place. So how do you do that? How do you take Europe to the next level? I agree with everyone who says that we need unconventional solutions. The problem is that who will be the people who will come up with unconventional solutions? And secondly, who will stand by them? How to build consensus around an unconventional solution that makes it conventional. This is what does not seem to be happening. So to put Europe in a better place, I think 3 things have to happen in the following order: rearmament, reform, and enlargement. If Europe fails, and all of these 3 elements are important, if Europe fails with either of them, I'm afraid neither security nor prosperity will be guaranteed. So you have to start with rearmament. We see how difficult it has taken off, but it's still lagging behind the actual needs. I agree, Europe cannot operate on the same rules after it enlarges to Ukraine and Western Balkans. So first Europe has to change itself. And with all my respect, I'm afraid Ukraine will reform itself faster than Europe will reform itself, preparing for Ukraine's accession. But this reform is needed, reform of the decision-making, policy principles, and there will be a lot of fighting. And then Europe will have to enlarge, because everything we have learned over the last decades is that wherever Europe does not come, someone else sets his foot in and creates pressure on domestic politics on the countries, transforming them, pushing them in different direction, which eventually create a problem for Europe. So these are the three purposes: rearmament, reform, and enlargement. And I'm looking forward to see leaders in Europe who will be able to build consensus around these three objectives.
Thank you very much. So now, looking from your perspective and experience in Ukraine, how do you see in the next, let's say, 10 years, when I say 10 years, it's a way of speaking, of course, how do you see the future connection between the United States and Europe, or the European Union, in the way it will evolve, in terms of security? Can you imagine a full deconnection between the US and the future Europe? And do you think that Ukraine can play a role, a special role to shape, to contribute to shape the future US-European relationship in terms of security?
Well, Thierry, as you know, I live in Kiev, and I think in terms of the next day. Thinking in terms of the next 10 years.
But you think?
Yes, but since I'm in France, and there are no air raid sirens yet, I think I will take the opportunity and make a longer forecast. I believe that the rupture between the United States and Europe is a very healthy development for Europe. I believe that everything we know about Europe suggests that it makes step forward usually as a result of a crisis, and the deeper the crisis, the stronger are the moves forward. It is difficult to live through Trump's presidency as we speak, but who will disagree that stronger Europe is a better Europe? So relying, there are many things I can complain about when it comes to President Trump and his policies, but we have to be honest. The United States have been paying for Europe's security for decades, which allowed Europe to save a lot of money and invest them in social welfare. Trump is not far from speaking the truth when he demands Europe to pay more. It's a fair deal, as he would say. So Europe has to, if Europe speaks about strategic autonomy, about independence, it wants to assert itself, it has to become a security adult. Not only an economic adult, but also a security one. And this is where Ukraine comes in. When the war in Ukraine broke out, what we soon realized was that it was true that Europe owned some of the best types of weapons in the world, but it was also true that those weapons existed in quantities sufficient for arms exhibitions held worldwide. So you can be proud of the technology that you possess, but when you are to defend yourself, if you want to be treated seriously, the calculation and deterrence is based not only on the quality, but also on numbers. So today, today Europe when it comes to defense, today Europe depends more on Ukraine than Ukraine depends on Europe, although Ukraine's dependence on Europe is very big. It's very solid. It's solid, it's big. So Ukraine greatly depends on Europe when it comes to security. It's our lifeline. But having said this, Europe's dependence on Ukraine when it comes to security is even greater, which drives this relationship. Because it doesn't matter how good your armies are, a battle-hardened army is always stronger than the one that is not. It doesn't matter how many missiles, it doesn't matter how many technological solutions you have. It's always the ability to apply that matters. And finally, I wish I was not speaking from this perspective. But you may have all the weapons in the world. What really matters is not that. What really matters to be able to defend yourself is the will of the people to resist. And I think this is where Ukrainians are buying a lot of time to our European fellows.
Well, thank you very much for these answers. But now, you know, in the next 10 years, again, when I say in the next 10 years, it means not the immediate future, not the very long term. The European Union will not become a real power. It's impossible in a matter of 10 years. If you think otherwise, tell me and explain me why. But I cannot imagine Europe becoming a strong power able to defend itself against any significant aggression. But on the other hand, I also hardly find Russia or any other power to be able to attack, aggress Europe as such in a significant way, unless, of course, you or anybody explain me the contrary. Of course, I can understand all kind of aggression, cyber attacks, and all that, obviously. But this, in turn, is related to diplomacy, because if we are attacked for cyber warfare, this sort of thing, it is also because they consider that we are attacking their own interests. You know. But a major war between Europe and Russia, I find it extremely difficult. Since, in particular, they are not even able to win the current war in Ukraine. So, my question to you is: you repeat, not only you, but the Ukrainians in general, they repeat that you are, in fact, defending not only Ukraine but Europe. This is what you say repeatedly. So can you tell us in what sense Ukraine is really defending Europe?
There are many people in Ukraine who believe so.
Of course, that I understand.
Yes, including in the political circles. I hold a more realist view on that. I believe that very few in Europe care that Ukraine defends them. And therefore, I do not view this relationship from the appeal to the rest of Europe that we are defending them. I think what we are doing, we are defending ourselves and buying time for Europe to prepare itself for what a good diplomat would call a more challenging environment. The nature of interest that stems from European Union to Ukraine is not based on gratitude for defending it. It's based on a very raw security instinct that Ukraine has something that the European Union doesn't. And Ukraine is the best place to take it, together with the rest of Ukraine, of course. I may be wrong, but I think I tend to view this relationship from a more pragmatic perspective. I want to dare to challenge you on one point, which is the attack. The thing is that you do not need to attack Europe. You need to attack one country. For Europe, to put Europe in a situation where it has to decide whether it was attacked as a whole or not. And what if the purpose of the war will not be to conquer an EU member, but to cause 24 hours of hesitation in Brussels, in both headquarters in Brussels, and to expose to every European and everyone in the world that the promise of unity was a lie. Is it worth several missiles, drones, and losing a couple of divisions? I think for President Putin it does. Because his goal is to prove that the European Union as a project, NATO as a project, are false. They're based on lies. Wars can be of very different kind. In Ukraine, it's a war of conquest. But there can also be a war of disintegration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But if I may say so, I think that to say today that the European Union can be thought of as a unity already today is a lie. You know, we have to face the reality. It can be a kind of alliance, but not a unity. That's the whole problem, you know, when we think about the future of European security. Are we talking about an alliance or a revised alliance among us with the smaller weight of the United States? Or are we talking of constructing a full unit as if the European Union were itself a nation? That's the big issue. But we don't have time to discuss that. But I think this is the whole issue that the politically correctness avoid to face. And I think that one of the role of this here at the WPC and among friends, European friends, but also those who look at Europe from outside, we have to face this question constructively, you know. What are we? But if we think that we are going to build a united Europe as if it were a single nation, I think it is the wrong approach. But let us keep that for future discussion and now move to Kazakhstan. Roman, you are now a friend of long standing here at the WPC. I thank you very much. You are one of the most prominent diplomats in Kazakhstan. So I start with you with the same question, with of course a different with our friends, which is that Kazakhstan, to my knowledge, do not think to apply immediately for candidacy to the European Union, and I suppose that most Europeans would be surprised if you were becoming a candidate for the very near future. So the question about the way you look at the European Union in terms of security in a very large sense, including economic security, of course, is very important. So please.
Thank you so much, Thierry, and it's a great honor to be here again with you. Well, I guess the further away from the European Union you get, from Georgia to Armenia, Ukraine, and then to Kazakhstan, the more optimistic perhaps you get about the European Union, or maybe it's because the Kazakhs are traditionally optimistic by nature, but we would like for Europe to succeed. We would like for Europe to become stronger. We see that Europe in the 4 years since February 22, but especially in 1 year since January 2025, has become a more strategically aware and has become an actor who wants to be more global, more united, more active, more resilient. And we only welcome that. For us, well, balance was the word that was used by your president. Balance is maybe a middle name for the Republic of Kazakhstan. We like balance. We work for balance. We can only survive in our very interesting geopolitical environment if we achieve balance with our neighbors. And for us, the distant neighbors, shall we say, the European Union and the United States are and extremely important pillars for our foreign policy. So we have really achieved a lot, I think, in the 30 years in our relations with the EU, but we see an even greater future. And there is a great mutual interest now in Brussels, in European capitals, in Paris, and in Astana, in having stronger relations, which goes way beyond the traditional areas of cooperation, such as oil exports, but ventures into critical raw materials, ventures into the creation of an efficient and working middle corridor, which was mentioned already several times today. So we're very much interested in a stronger Europe. For us, it's a paramount, a key part of our foreign policy. And I think that looking forward, we can look 10 years ahead of us, thankfully. We can see this relationship where Kazakhstan and Central Asia, on the one hand, and the European Union, a bigger European Union, become closer and are indeed connected through multiple routes, not just the middle corridor, but including the middle corridor first and foremost. We see a relationship that is much stronger, growing from $50 billion trade now to, I don't know, 100, 150, and expanding. So we are not indeed going to join the European Union in the foreseeable future. There are not even a discussion about that. But there is a territory in Kazakhstan that is beyond the legal definition, I guess, of the borders of Europe, beyond the Ural River, and that's the territory the size of Greece. So we have eventually a claim to be part of Europe. We're a Eurasian country, but for now we are working on developing our cooperation with our neighbors as a balancing power, as a middle power. We take this responsibility very seriously. We're keen to work with the European Union, with France, with other like-minded partners to reform the international system as much as we can.
Thank you very much. When you think about in Kazakhstan, not only you or diplomats, but more generally, when you think about the European Union, do you think of it as an international organization among others, or regional organization among others, or do you think that it is something more, and in what sense?
Well, it is something more, I guess, but it is indeed a strange animal. I agree with you.
It is. Yeah.
I remember a big discussion in the United States how to treat the EU ambassador there, whether to call her or him an ambassador or head of mission, and accord him or her respective privileges. But we made the choice, as I think the majority of the countries in the world, to treat the EU ambassador as the ambassador representing the Union. I would add to this discussion a point that in Kazakhstan, the European Union has a very strong soft power pool. People look up to the European Union, still believe that the European Union stands for values, for standards, for high level of living, obviously, as our colleague from Ukraine just mentioned. But they also see that this union can be a stronger entity in the future. Yes, it is torn from inside by numerous contradictions and by this discussion about how to expand, whether to expand, which countries to accept, which countries not to accept. Of course, there are already various concentration circles within the EU, the Eurozone, the Schengen zone, etc. But I think the EU can succeed if it has this strategic purpose. I will agree with Mr. Kuleba that under duress, the EU has responded in the past, and we can only hope that it will rise up to the occasion. And we hope that it not only comes to Central Asia, but stays in Central Asia. And we hope that this an immense growth of interest that we now see from Brussels, from Paris, from Berlin, from Rome, will not subside after this, again, diplomatically speaking, a very tense geopolitical moment passes in Ukraine, I mean. Because, and I think that the fundamentals for stronger cooperation between our regions are there. So I hope that the commitment will also outlive this this period. And Central Asia basically is already closer, but it will be even closer than you think to the EU.
Thank you very much. I think that one simple lesson or lesson conclusion we probably all of us can draw from this discussion and other discussions as well is that yes, the European Union is a very strange animal that the Europeans themselves do not understand fully. Perhaps it is better that they don't understand it all. But if it did not exist, the world would definitely not be better. So we have to work as well and as intelligently as we can to improve this strange animal. And you are part, all your countries are part of this effort to make this animal more sexy, if I can say so. So thank you very much. We have 3 minutes and something left, and I will take, let's say, 2 brief questions. Monsieur Costa, allez-y.
Question to Dmitry. Well, first observation, then a question. Observation, I think as Europeans we may be thankful to Ukraine for fighting so hard, not only for your country, but also for us, number 1. Question, given the fact that you have had to develop such strong military competencies, and especially the new war with the drones, etc., illustrated by the fact you have helped Gulf states to fight against those attacks, don't you think that Ukraine not only can contribute to rearmament of defense, but could play a leading role?
Maybe I will take the second question. That's another question. Pierre Lévy? Pierre Lévy, oui. Former ambassador to Russia until recently.
Well, you won't be surprised that my question will be about the Russian attitude. We know that for Russia, all this is about a zero-sum game. I mean, your relations with the EU, whether an association agreement or a membership, is viewed really as impossible. I think there was recently a meeting between Mr. Pashinyan and Vladimir Putin, and he said the membership of Armenia is inconceivable or impossible. And of course, this is rooted to a strong political vision dating back to USSR, near abroad on all this. This is well known. And this is also connected to some economic problems or difficulties. I mean, the compatibility between having relation with the EU and the economic Eurasian Union. This is a point which was raised when we talked about association agreement with Ukraine in 2014. I think there are technical solutions if the political will is there. So I would like to have your views about the attitude of Russia, which for me didn't change.
The question is addressed to whom?
To all participants, especially to those countries member of the economic Eurasian Union, like Kazakhstan.
So we have
and Armenia.
We have 30 seconds, sorry, left. So I will perhaps ask, well, maybe Dmitro and Roman to say just a few words, if it is possible, to answer the 2 questions. Well, if it takes 1 minute instead of 8 seconds, I accept.
No, Kiri, we do not want to be expelled from this beautiful place. Thank you. And secondly, Ukraine's defense industry will be the first area in which Ukraine will become a fully integrated part of Europe. The rest will follow.
Roman?
Well, I think that question was not so far related to Kazakhstan. As I said, we are not seeking EU membership, but we are indeed a member and a founding member of the Eurasian Economic Union. And for us, it was a very logical decision when we launched that process of economic cooperation with Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, Armenia, Russia back then. So we will continue to live where we are, and nobody has ever now taught us how to conquer geography, and we live in the heart of Eurasia. This is our part of the world where we have to live, and the way to strengthen our economic potential, to ensure our economic prosperity, is to work with our immediate neighbors such as Russia and China.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was an extremely interesting panel, too short, but extremely interesting. Let me offer to all of you, for further thought, a remark that one of our friends here made to me earlier today, which is that since the beginning of our conference, the name of Putin was very, very little mentioned. It was mentioned twice, I think, this afternoon by you, Dmitro, and maybe not Romani, but no.
Russia was
So
mentioned. So
Russia,
it's pretty much the same.
and Russia was also very little mentioned all over the conference, including when we spoke about the Middle East. So I will not pretend to give an explanation now, but I think that friend was that's a very interesting remark. So we should all of us think, why did we mention Russia so little and Putin so little? So with that question, I thank you very much, and we move now to the before last session. That is on the United States, of course. Thank you very much.